Hey everyone, we're doing another species spotlight today, and this is one I've been very much looking forward to doing. I have been holding off on it for a little while because honestly, she's not great on camera, and I don't like having bites on camera if I can help it. But I'm actually kind of running a little bit low and on time as well. Like I said in other videos, I've been absolutely crazy busy. But without further ado, we're going to hope for the best. Today we're going to be talking about Angolan pythons. So Angolan pythons are honestly one of the rarest snakes in the hobby. There are plenty of others out there that are just as rare, if not more so. But these guys are really cool. These guys were originally found in 1887 by Westerners for the very first time in parts of Namibia and in parts of Angola. And actually basically along the eastern part of that the Namibian desert. So when you think about Africa, there's the big Saharan desert, and then further south along the southwestern side is the Namibian desert. And on the eastern part of that desert, this is the range of the Angolan pythons. A really interesting thing about these guys, which actually it shares in common with a lot of other snakes in the hobby, is that the range actually exists a lot more in Namibia than it does in Angola. But that was the country where they were first exported, hence Angolan python, just like a lot of other species of snakes, like the Russian sand boas and the Russian rat snakes and things like that. So when you very first look at this, it obviously looks very similar to a ball python, and in fact they are very closely related. But there are quite a few differences between the Angolan python and ball pythons. So first of all, the range. We talked about the difference. These guys are more arid, deserty type snakes, and ball pythons are much more subtropical. So when we look at these guys, there's a few physical characteristics that are a little bit different. So number one, they are a little bit longer in general. So on average, ball pythons they're in that 4.5 foot range. 5 feet is pretty big for a female, and there are some that can even reach 6 feet and over. These guys average that 5 to 5.5 foot range, and they can get a little bit longer. They're also not usually quite as chunky. However, wild ball pythons are not nearly as chunky either. And then they also, if you look, they have much larger eyes, and they have smaller heads. And then, obviously, the very end, their scalation is entirely different. And then in addition to that, there's no morphs, these guys. Ball pythons being very famous for number one being the pet rocks that we have, and then number two, all of the morphs that they have. These guys don't have any morphs, and that's probably because we just haven't bred them enough. Now, every single one of these characteristics they have for a specific reason. And a lot of that has to do with their environment. So, that eastern part of the Namibian desert, the temperature ranges of that is insane. In the dry season or in the summer, it can get over 122 degrees Fahrenheit. In the winter, it can get between 50 to below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's 0 degrees Celsius for everybody not in the U.S. So it fluctuates like crazy there. And so like a lot of ectothermic animals, so like reptiles and amphibians, they're not active during the really hottest parts of the season. They're not active during the very coldest parts of the season. But when they are active, they're out during the times of day when it's actually amenable for them. So these guys, so we talked about those larger eyes. Being that the temperature fluctuation is so crazy, these guys are a lot more active at night than a lot of other species of snakes, specifically the ball python. So they have those larger eyes to allow for a little bit more light to come in. Another one thing is, like I said before, they have those smaller heads. These guys, their diets, because again, they spend a lot of time looking for their prey actively more than ball pythons do. They live in areas where prey is attracted to them, as well as searching it out. These guys actively look for their food a little more often at night, and that involves sticking their heads down into a lot of rodent burrows and into ground nesting bird nests. And so that smaller head allows them to actually go into those rodent burrows and grab those animals out a little bit easier. And then the last and most distinctive characteristic is their scalation. So we're not talking about the pattern, although the pattern is really cool. It works for breaking up their pattern along the ground and in rocks and in things like that. But their actual scalation has to do with their environment. So if you look, it's not really scales, it's almost like little beads. Just like Gila monsters, beaded lizards, savanna monitors, and even some species of desert tortoise, they all have that beaded scalation in difference of, say, regular scalation of like a boa or a python, or even like a other type of turtle when we're talking about the desert tortoise. And that's for water retention. Those little beads actually allow their bodies to retain moisture a lot better and a lot more effectively than, say, any other scale, which obviously does add for moisture retention as well as protection, but those beads are in fact an adaptation to more desert or arid dwelling reptiles. So it's a really cool thing. Now, if you were to go out into Angola, you're going to run into some issues. So the reason why we don't have a whole lot of these, and honestly, we haven't studied them or kept them nearly as long or as often, which is probably, again, why we don't have any morphs, as a lot of other species of snakes, is because where they're from. So obviously, they're from an area where it's not very habitable for both humans as well as other things, which means looking for them is a little bit harder. You have to go out at night, or you have to go into areas where they are normally found. So these guys are found, they're oftentimes found in rock crevices, in very sparsely areas where there are trees, in burrows, especially in the more eastern part of the range, where it gets into a little bit more of like the classic savanna of Africa that we think of. They're found in very deep burrows, so it's a lot harder to dig for them than essentially going over and kicking over a termite mound in Benin or Ghana for a ball python, which I'm aware that's not exactly how it works, but you get the point I'm making. That's a little bit harder to do. And the other reason is that there was an Angolan civil war that went on for a number of years, and it made it to where anyone who wanted to go in and study these or even collect them, because as we know, collecting animals for the pet trade is a very profitable business. No one really wanted to risk it because of obviously the active warfare. And then even once the Angolan Civil War ended, there were landmines found throughout the areas where these guys would be found. So luckily, it's been a little bit longer time going on, as well as some of the landmines have started to been removed. Thank you, Gambian giant pouched rats. Those guys are awesome. I wish I could keep those. Basically, giant rats that go out and sniff for landmines. Really, really cool. They're starting to be found a little bit more. They're not CITES protected, they're just hard to export, so they're not really worked with a whole lot. So most of the animals that we have here in the hobby are captive bred animals, and they're really, really cool. Honestly, I am super excited, and I am absolutely digging how well she is doing right now. The male that we have doesn't do this at all. She is a lot more handleable than the male, but even then I have to watch, because she's sneaky too. She's almost like a little scrub python, where she'll just watch and wait for me to get comfortable and then right in my face. But these guys are really cool. It seems like, not to say that ball pythons are unintelligent, because all the reptiles are a lot smarter than we give them credit for, but these guys seem to be a lot more active and curious and a little bit more attentive when it comes to their interactions with us and their environment. It seems they're a little bit more aware of things and like to watch stuff. Kind of like I said, like that scrub python, where some species of snakes, like the scrubs and retics, you can literally watch like the clockwork ticking as they're watching you and figuring you out. And it seems like these guys do that a little bit too. And honestly, I can't wait for this girl to get 5.5, 6 feet long. Although I am still growing her, so it's going to take a while. That it'll be this really cool animal to where I'll be able to bring it out and people will be able to feel the difference of her scales. I'm just super excited. I'm really digging how well she's doing. But if you guys ever want to go out and decide that you want to add an Angolan python to your collection, or you want to be part of the group that is breeding these, so that way we're able to have them in the hobby for other generations, so that way we have more than just crested geckos and ball pythons, a couple things you need to keep in mind. Number one, the price tag. These guys are not cheap. Because of the rarity, there's a more market for it. That means that you're going to be paying a lot more. The other thing is you need to think about biodiversity, or genetic diversity, not biodiversity. You want to try to get unrelated pairs. The pair I have are actually a related pair, so I have to go out and find another unrelated female to pair to my male, and then cross back in a couple generations down or other animals down the road, because I'm not doing brother to sister pairings. I'm not really down with that. But as far as actual care goes, you can keep them very similar to that of a ball python. So, they're obviously a little bit larger, so give them more space. So a 4x2, I think, is a starting point for an adult Angolan python. If you want to give them more room, go for it. They do like to perch. As I said, they like to be found in like rock crevices and caves and systems like that. So if you want to give them places to perch up, some heavier duty branches for them to kind of wrap up and hang out as well. That's really good. As I said before, they're found in the Nambian desert, so those super hot temperatures, but these guys really exist in microclimates in those little cave systems and those rock croppings under those burrows, and that's where they spend a majority of their time during the day or when it's very cold out as well, and they come out when it's more applicable for them. So we want to keep them in the same temp range as a ball python, in that mid 80s kind of a range, not too high of a hot spot. They are fairly nocturnal, but you still want to give them a little bit of low light spectral level of UVA. Yep, see, there you go. She's kind of getting a little grumpy with me. That a nice little UVA and UVB, especially like at night. If you want to give them just a little bit during the evening and during the mornings, they'll absolutely come out and they'll do a little bit of cryptic basking where they'll poke out of their hides and they'll expose just like their heads. It's really, really cool. The biggest thing about this is that I talked about those rock outcroppings. These guys aren't like the gray banded king snakes or the Mexican black king snakes that I've done videos about the build where I have like the stacks of rocks. These guys are much larger, heavier bodied snakes. And so if you want to build, which I think would be really cool, maybe one of these days I'll do it, I'll get like a nice 6-foot enclosure and I'll put in a really big rock, like a little rock outcropping or a little escarpment of these guys for them to perch on. You have to secure them together and secure it to your enclosure because they absolutely will hurt themselves if you have that stacked up. They will pull those down, and sharp, heavy rocks can absolutely injure or kill your animal. You don't want to do that. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I am super excited and super appreciative and glad I get to work with such a cool and amazing species. I'm very, very excited and super happy that she's doing so well with me right now. These guys are an amazing species of snake. I love to be able to share animals that we haven't been able to, that a lot of people don't get to see very often. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please let me know down below. If you want to take a look at my playlist that I have of all of the species spotlights that I have quite a few of them. You can take a look at a lot of the ones that I have, as well as pretty soon I'm going to start beginning into a few more of the species that a lot of people don't see as often. If you want to go check that out, it also helps my click-through rate, which allows YouTube to let me know that, like, hey, I exist, and they'll suggest my content a little bit more. That is super appreciative. Hope everyone is having a great day. Super look forward to doing even more reptile content for everybody, and we'll check you next time.